I am Nick Sconia, and you are listening to the Holistic Monitor. And today we are starting off our season 8 with a certified AIP coach and a functional medicine coach, Xenia Brandstetter. And she's coming to us from Germany. And we'll bring her in right now to have our discussion. Hi, Xenia. How you doing?
Hi, Nick. I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So, you work with autoimmune issues, and could you briefly explain what that is to everybody listening so that they have an idea exactly what an autoimmune condition might be?
Yeah, of course. So it's a really broad and wide field of chronic health conditions. There's definitely dozens, maybe hundreds of different autoimmune conditions, and what they all have in common is that the immune system, which is supposed to protect our body, is misguided and starts turning against ourselves. It could be against any kind of any organ you can think of, any tissue you can think of. Could be the skin, could be individual organs, could be different tissues, like joints, for example. And yeah, it can happen all over the body. It is not super well understood why this happens. There's a lot of question marks, a lot of questions in that field. But what is understood is that it does happen. And once this happens, it is something that can be difficult to manage, because when the immune system forgets that it's supposed to protect our own tissue and starts attacking that tissue, it won't be able to unlearn that. So it can pause doing this, but it could always be triggered and start doing that again. So that's why these conditions can be tricky to manage, can be difficult to deal with. Also from a medical point of view, there's no cure for this. So you'll have to find out what works for you, how to manage these conditions best, to kind of calm down your immune system and make it feel safe, make it feel like it doesn't have to fight so hard. Because that's usually when these things happen, when the immune system is overwhelmed, overloaded, it kind of fights on all different kinds of fronts. And then it can happen that it also, in the crossfire, attacks our own system.
And now, when we talk about immune system, it's the system that helps us with our immunity to various forms of attack on our body. The autoimmune system is one that's not done by us, but done by our body automatically. Is that correct?
Exactly. So typically what we think of when we think of the immune system is protecting us against foreign invaders like bacteria, viruses, but it could be really any kind of foreign organism you can think of. It could be different foods that we might eat that the body doesn't tolerate well. It could be pesticides that are on our foods or that are simply floating around in the air, air pollution, anything really that we come in contact with, which could be harmful for our body. This is where our immune system comes in and defends us against. There's different aspects of the immune system, some that are kind of just there as a first defense mechanism. They're not very specific. They attack everything that isn't supposed to be there. And then there's also aspects of the immune system that can develop very well, that can start, attack very specific kinds of bacteria. For example, it's called the adaptive immune system. That is very highly developed organisms in our body. That's, for example, how it works when we get vaccinated, that we're able to form specific antibodies, specific parts of our immune system that are able to handle one specific kind of strain or foreign organism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that is basically like a triggering mechanism to get the body to look at this thing coming in as an empty, like without potency, and then create a way to attack it or remove it or whatever it might be.
Exactly.
Now, what are we finding that is causing? You said that there's not really known. Is it an environmental? What are the thoughts on what are causing this rash of different types of autoimmune dysfunctions and issues that people are having with their own body attacking them? Is it like their body's almost becoming zombified to themselves, and acting on its own against itself?
There's many different theories. So in functional medicine, people think about it in the sense that there's 3 reasons why we get autoimmune diseases. First of all, we have genetics. So people might be predisposed to get autoimmune diseases. That's often why we see autoimmune diseases tend to run in the family. So you might have parents or siblings or anyone else in your family who might also have an autoimmune condition, and then that increases your chances of having one. That doesn't mean that you will have to have one, but it tends to run in the families. That's why we know that there is a genetic component. Then another third, the second component would be environment. So that could be anything you can think of in terms of environment. It could be infections, that could be also stress related. It could be a working environment. We have lifestyles people are leading that are highly correlated with their environment, the environment that they live in, if they spend time outside, what kind of time they spend outside, if they breathe in polluted air, if they eat and drink different things that are contaminated. But also I mentioned infections in the beginning, and that is something that can be very difficult to deal with because it's something you can't really control. That is the factor here when it comes to the environment. It's things that happen around us that affect us, but there's very little we can do about that. So sometimes what we see is people have an infection, a virus infection, bacteria infection, and then that triggers the immune system to become to turn against ourselves and not just try and attack the virus, try and attack the bacteria, but then also attack the tissue where the virus and the bacteria sit. So if we have a latent infection, something where a bacteria infects the body, we might not know about this because it's something that's very subtle, but the bacteria sits somewhere in our body. This often happens with the thyroid, for example. And then people start to have thyroid symptoms because the body tries to fight this bacteria that sits in the thyroid, but the thyroid also gets damaged in the meantime. So that is something that could happen. And then the third component, the last one, would be anything lifestyle related. And that is where we can have a very big influence on what we do. That could be, again, the foods that we eat. If we pay attention to that, what kind of nutrition does our body need? Do we get all the nutrients that we need to heal, that we need to have a functioning body? How many hours do we sleep? Do we have restful sleep? Is there other things that we can do to get more rest during the day? What kind of movement do we engage in? Do we move at all during the day? Are we sedentary? Are we only at home, working all day, sitting all day, not really moving around? These are things that we can influence ourselves. So what we say in functional medicine is that if all these 3 conditions are fulfilled for autoimmune disease to happen, the lifestyle component is the one where we can then go in and say, okay, here is some damage that has been done, but we can still influence that. We can take this one part out of the equation, and that is how we can then contain that condition quite well. People have very good results with that to live with these autoimmune conditions. So it doesn't have to be something that impacts your life tremendously for the duration of, as many years as you still live. It is something that can be very well managed. People live really well with this. I have 3 autoimmune conditions myself that have impacted my life massively. And now I don't have any symptoms at all. It doesn't impact me at all. It doesn't hold me back from doing anything. So there is a lot of hope that I hope people will realize, because it is something that is still very much in our hands. And even if we have, a bad gene pool that we can't influence, that that doesn't matter so much. What matters is that we can influence the lifestyle part of it, and with that this is really all we need to do to be able to control it.
And I would say that the lifestyle is where the real battles are with anyone that's dealing with anything, period. It's the behaviors and patterns of behavior, and also the out of control desire, let's say for sugar or for alcohol or something like that, that's causing, it's really the front line for where to attack this these cases, so to speak, or these issues that are propping up. It could be coming from the environment, sure. It could also be because we're putting ourselves in an environment that is, caustic to us, but it's a behavioral pattern that's doing that, like smoking, like drinking, like eating the wrong foods. Really, the front line is what goes in first, what we bring into ourselves or what we're doing. And once we fix that, then we're really on a better footing to adjust everything else. Or maybe we even see an adjustment without doing much more than lifestyle. Now, you work directly with coaching, so that would be, I would say, mainly what you're working on is that frontline lifestyle change, or that kind of place is where you're working with people. What are they doing? What are they bringing in? What kind of food are they eating? Yeah, garbage in, garbage
Exactly.
out. Nutrition in, nutrition out, right?
Yeah,
What's
I
the
mean,
outcome? So I imagine that's what you're working with specifically.
yeah, exactly. And you mentioned it, like we all do things that we know are not healthy for us. Um, and it can be a really tough battle to, first of all, decide to no longer do that, but then also go and actually no longer do that. Because
Hmm.
that's often two different things. Like we all want to be healthy. Nobody wants to be unhealthy, right? And yet it is a completely different battle to fight to say, I am doing this now. I'm committing to this process. I am only going to do things that are good for my body. I'm going to put my body first, no matter what happens. And that is very difficult. And it's difficult for all people, but it is especially difficult if you are facing health issues because those are the times where we turn to comfort food. Those are the
Right.
times where we don't want to do all of these healthy habits because they are energy intensive. They require a lot of energy from us. So people tend to need a lot of help with this, need a lot of support with this because they feel like they're alone with this battle often. Because you might
Hmm.
have a family, you might have friends who are supportive, but for them from the outside, if you don't really know what that person is going through, if you don't really understand the battles they're fighting every single day just to get out of bed sometimes,
Right.
that can be very isolating and it can be really tough to walk that road alone. That is why people tend to turn to a health coach who kind of understands what they are going through and is able to guide them through this process in a way that is supportive and also gives them the reassurance that they can do it, gives them accountability, someone who checks in with them, who doesn't necessarily tell them what to do. So that is not what a health coach does, but who presents them with the options, who informs them, who shares a lot of knowledge, who's a bit of a mentor for them in certain parts, because ideally a health coach has walked that walk before and
Hmm.
has been in the same steps before as the people who are now trying to work through their health conditions, and is someone who they can turn to, talk about their issues, be honest, and not have any judgment come their way. Because I think that's also something people often struggle with when you have a chronic health condition and you feel like you can't talk about this too much because people easily judge because it's a condition, it's a group of conditions that is not very easy to see. And when
Yeah.
people can't see what's happening, they don't understand it. If you have someone who has a broken foot, they are allowed to complain that the foot hurts. They're allowed to complain that they can't walk so much and how that impacts their life. But if you have a sneaky autoimmune condition and one of your main symptoms is fatigue, nobody can see how fatigued you are. Nobody can see
Right.
how hard it is for you to simply be awake during the day. That is something that is impossibly hard to explain. And
Hmm.
it's these little symptoms that often come with autoimmune diseases. There's many of these sneaky symptoms that people don't really understand simply because they are not visible and they're really difficult to grasp. And yeah, and when you're dealing with these symptoms, and then someone comes in and says, "Oh, now you have to change your diet. No, you can't have this food anymore, which you're enjoying so much. You can't have the pasta anymore. You can't have the pizza anymore. You can't have your burgers anymore. You can't turn to your, all of the comfort foods that you want, especially during those times where you're struggling so much." That can be really difficult.
Yeah.
So someone who can then come in with alternatives, who can come
Hmm.
and help you out and make this easier for you, who can work with you through the mind struggles that also come with that, because it's mostly a mind thing. I feel like anyone can do lifestyle changes, like change their diet, change their sleep patterns, change their movement routine once their mind is ready. And that is often the first thing that we have to tackle, because it's difficult to build these structures. It's difficult to build this resilience in our mind that we can deal with taking on so many new things, and managing all the stress that also comes with this, because having a chronic health condition comes with tremendous amount of stress in all areas of your life. So if that is not something you are equipped to deal with, equipped to handle well, you're not in a position to then go and start your whole life, go and start your diet, go and take up an intense exercise routine. That is usually not the place where I would start with people.
Yeah. Right. I mean, well, and I have trouble with, I should say, and I think that other people kind of gloss over the word because it leaves a little bit of a mystery, but the word coach can throw people off a little bit because they're not sure, like, is this person like egging me on? I have to go here and I'm going to be going into a, you know, getting coached and pushed and prodded. And I think I like the word guide, as a guide. You're in something right now and you need a guide to get you out. I feel like that's a more suitable term, though coaching is like the big buzzword for this, but I feel like guidance and guide is what you're doing, and it's a lot more of a gentle understanding for people that say, I need a guide to get out of here. You're in a swamp, and where's dry land? How do I get up out of whatever I'm in? You get a guide, somebody that knows the terrain, somebody that's been there, has a light to shine in the dark, can guide you out of the forest or whatever, to higher ground, to a place where they can then assume the rest of their life, with or without the guide, of course, at that point, to live a better life once they've gotten the guidance on how to correct where they were at. Do you feel like that is a fitting term, guide or guidance, as to what you do?
Yeah, totally. So I think it's extremely accurate, and I would explain it the same way. I would look at a coach more as an ally, really, someone who holds your hand through that process. If we go with the guide metaphor, someone who has the map, who takes you by the hand, who walks that path with you, who doesn't carry your backpack for you, but you carry together. They check what's in your backpack. Are the things that are in your backpack, are they supposed to be in there? Is there maybe other things that you can take with you on this path that equip you better? And then you carry together. And when you're getting tired, when you want to sit down, you can speak to your coach. They can help you. They can help you rest, or they can motivate you to keep walking forward. That is exactly how I would view that situation of working
role
with the coach. Exactly, that role.
Right.
Yeah. So it is not someone who will be walking behind you and push you on every moment of the day, right? And be like, you have to walk faster, you have to walk faster. That is not what a coach is doing.
Right.
But at the same time, it is also not someone who will carry you the whole way.
Yeah.
So you will have to walk the way on your own, but you won't do it alone. So you will have someone there. You don't have to worry about the way. You don't have to worry about what comes next. That is something you can pass on to your coach. Your coach will, at every turning point, at every fork in the road, they will present you with your options. They will explain the pros and cons for you. They will help you make a decision. You make that decision. You have no responsibility still, because it is your journey. So they won't push anything on you that you are not willing to do, but they will help you make these decisions for yourself.
Now, could you give an example if, let's say, someone came up and said, I've got a lot of joint pain and it's causing me to not be very active, and so therefore eating more. Let's say they're put on a little weight and they know that they have joint pain, and they come to you and they say, are you able to help me with this? What would be your protocol? What would be your beginning steps? And what can somebody expect when they come to you for help? What are they going to, how are you going to approach that kind of case, let's say?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I have a three-phase program that usually all my clients tend to run through because the the issues they come with, the health issues, might be very different from one another. But like we said before, they all have the same root cause. They all have the same issue that is related to the immune system. So since we know the issues come from the immune system, we know we have to tackle the immune system first. And the process for that will always be the same, no matter what your symptoms at the end of the day are. What I would usually do is people come in often because I am an AIP certified coach, so autoimmune protocol certified coach. That is a lifestyle protocol specifically for people with autoimmune conditions. And it has a heavy focus on diet. So when people find me, often it's because they're looking for someone who can help them with the diet piece. And they come in, they say, I've read that diet can play a big role in managing my condition. Is that something you can help me with? And of course I can, but it is usually not the place where I would start because, like I said before, people often come in with a lot of baggage, a lot of weight on their shoulders. They want to do all of these things, but they don't have the resources for those things at the moment because it does take a lot of energy to change your whole diet. It's usually not the part that people enjoy the most. So what I usually would do is let's take a step back. Let's think about where we want to go. If anything was possible for you, if you didn't have any health conditions, any health concerns, any restrictions in terms of your health, where would you be? What would you do? What kind of person would you be? And what starts to happen then is that people have this vision that they don't really allow themselves because it's something that seems a bit unreal right now. It seems like it's out of reach. So they don't allow themselves usually to think about these things. In a best case scenario, what would my life be like? But once we've established that, they have something to work with, something to motivate them, something to guide them. That is usually when we're talking about the guiding role of a coach, the path that the coach guides someone through isn't a path that I came up with. They tell me where they want to end up. And then I can guide them to reach that vision that they have for their own life. And that is something that's really important for me because people often come in with a lot of fear. They come in because they are scared that their health is going to get worse. They are scared that, their best years are behind them. They don't want to get worse. That is the first concern that they have. But if we open that up to the possibility that not only could they not feel worse, but they could actually start to feel better. And they can start to feel better than they used to before they even got sick in the first place. Because that is something that happened to me. I was diagnosed with my first health condition, I think in 5-6 years ago. And long before that, I didn't feel like I was at 100% of my health for the longest time.
Right.
Now, after those years that I worked through my condition, I feel tons better than I did even before I was sick. I feel better than I've ever felt before in my life. So that is the path that I want to open up for them, this possibility that anything is possible, even if you have a health condition, even if you have an autoimmune condition that will always be there. My autoimmune conditions are still there, but it is possible that you feel the best you could possibly feel. And that is something that people first have to digest a bit because it is so unreal. It is not something that usually their doctors tend to present them with because if you only go to the doctor and take your medication, there's only so much they can do for you. It is something that you have to decide you want that for yourself and you are willing to also put in all of that work. So there's a lot of mind work that I would start with them with because that helps them shift their focus from this fear-based approach to one where anything is possible. And this excitement can grow, this optimism can grow, positivity can grow, love for yourself can grow because you're starting to not do this out of fear, but because you love yourself so much that you want this future for yourself, that you want good things for yourself, you want the best possible life for yourself. And that's something we first have to work for. That is often something that isn't there when people look for a coach because they're at a point in their life where they feel like it's so bad right now. I feel like I'm at rock bottom. Now I need help, but I'm actually feeling awful. I'm feeling really bad. I have no mental resources to walk this path on my own. That is why they are asking for help. So first we have to build these mental resources. We have to look at what is going on in your mind. How are you speaking to yourself when you're alone, when you're looking at yourself in the mirror? What kind of words are you using? Is this a supportive voice? Because usually it's not. Usually it's a little gremlin voice, that we all have, that is really, really hard on ourselves. And that's not going to help you through this journey.
Right.
You first have to build out this voice that is supportive, that says you can do it. You have something to work for. There's something that motivates you. There's this light at the end of the tunnel that we want to now work towards. And this is where I start with them, doing a lot of mindset work. And then when we have these resources equipped, where someone feels like they can rely on themselves now, they have a strong mental base where they now feel like they can take on more things. They can now take on a diet change. Then I'll present them with the options again, because like I said, I'm an AIP certified coach. So coaching someone to change their diet is something that I do. Usually what we do with the AIP, the autoimmune protocol, is do an elimination diet to find out what kind of food triggers a person has. Because often autoimmune diseases can be rooted in food triggers. We eat a lot of food on a day-to-day basis that our bodies don't tolerate, but we don't know what those foods are because they might be different for anyone. So what we tend to do in the AIP elimination diet is take out all of the foods that could potentially trigger a person. And there's a whole list of foods. I think the most well-known probably is gluten. People tend to be like, oh, you have to avoid gluten immediately. You have to avoid lactose. There's a different kinds of foods that are known to cause people intolerances, that cause people to experience food triggers. So what we do is take all of them out of the diet for typically a month, maybe longer, depending on how that person feels. But at the same time, what we want is for them to get all of the nutrients that their body needs. Because what we often do is we overeat, we eat a lot of different foods, or we eat a lot of foods, but we don't eat a lot of different foods. So we don't actually get all the nutrients that we have. We overeat, but we are still under fueled in terms of nutrients. So looking at where do your nutrients come from? What kind of nutrients do you need on a day-to-day basis? Do you get those? So we don't want this diet to be super restrictive. That is usually what people are scared about, that taking out all of the food triggers would leave them with a very restricted diet. But what happens is at the same time, we want to enrich that diet with so many different kinds of foods that present them with all the nutrients they could possibly get. So it doesn't have to be a restrictive diet at all. That is not the goal here. It's supposed to be a diet that is the least restrictive, but at the same time avoids your food triggers and also provides you with all the different nutrients that the body needs. And that is something that will go for a couple of weeks. We work through that. Once they start feeling better, we reintroduce foods one by one. We track their symptoms. We find out what the triggering foods are, so you can then avoid those and create your own custom-made diet if you want. Because again, this is something that looks different for anyone. What is a food trigger for me might not be one for you. So it's important there that we work really closely with the client and track their symptoms, track exactly what they eat, how they react to that, to find out what works for them and what doesn't work for them. And then they can create their own long-term diet around that, where they might come up with, 5 different foods that are triggering for them that they won't be able to eat long-term, but anything else is still fine. So you can then create more freedom again in your diet after you've done these initial couple of weeks where you're going through an elimination diet. And then usually people tend to feel much better already during that. So that can go really fast. For some people, it takes a bit longer. For others, it can go really fast that they start to see success. They start to have massive improvement in their symptoms, sometimes feel a lot better. Again, that gives you more resilience. That gives you more motivation. Then we can think about, what else can we do to improve your situation right now? And one, maybe not easy thing, but a simple thing to work on is sleep and is rest. Like, what can you do to improve your sleep quality? What can you do to improve your energy reserves, to give you enough rest during the day? Because we often don't rest enough. Right. It's something that has a bit of a negative ring to it. You feel tired a lot. You might be ashamed because of that, because other people feel less tired. So you don't allow yourself to sleep as long as your body wants you to sleep. You don't allow yourself these rest moments. And you're extra hard on your body because this is uncomfortable for you and you don't want to experience this. So you just try and avoid it and push through. But that is the worst thing we can do, because when our body tells us it's tired, it's because it needs that sleep. It's not something that, the body just wants to bother us. It is because it really needs that sleep. So can we fix that? Can we give you that sleep somehow? Can we give you different ways to rest during the day to get more energy? Again, that improves your symptoms massively. And then at that point, people usually have more energy to then think about, what is it that I can do for movement? Is there an exercise I can pick up now? But it doesn't even have to be anything exercise related. Like any kind of movement counts, and any kind of movement is better than no movement. So if people just want to go for a walk, that is perfectly fine with me. I'm not going to push them to go to the gym 5 times a day. That, if anything, that would probably be counterproductive, because our body needs this rest we just mentioned. It works really hard to heal us, to recover. Exercise can be a massive stressor for many people, so we don't want to overdo it there. But at the same time, it is something that really helps us heal. Our body really wants to move. If we don't allow ourselves this exercise, it's something that really holds us back. But it doesn't have to be anything scary. It doesn't have to be a massive exercise routine that we now create. So working with a person to find out what is that they like to do, because it's something that they're also supposed to enjoy. Like, I don't want them to do any kind of exercise, any kind of movement that they're not enjoying, because it's important that we're still having fun in this process. And that is something that people often don't really allow themselves. They think this has to be a really hard process. It has to be a really tough road to walk. It really doesn't have to be that. And that is why it's so important, to have a coach who helps you figure out these things that you actually enjoy doing. Because if you enjoy doing them, you're also going to do them. If it's something that you really don't want to do and you resist at every path, at every turning point, at every decision, you resist because it's not something that you're convinced of, it's not something that you enjoy doing, you're not going to do it. So having someone who helps you figure this out and makes this process fun is really important.
Right. And I think that people have a fear of change. But I also think that a lot of people live, like you said, with what we call the pile-on effect of symptoms, that it's hard to tell what the source of the issue might be. And they're just living in that. And through that change in mindset and then adjusting the intake, seeing results, I think that people will kind of glom onto the idea, like, this actually feels better. Why do I want to feel the way I did feel? Why am I afraid of changing that when the outcome here, I'm feeling like $100? I'm feeling great. Of course you want to keep going, right? Of course you'd want to maintain that and maybe develop a new life, a new lifestyle that supports feeling good versus being dragged down and having that pile-on effect of symptoms. That I think could be very motivating for somebody to get to the point where they're able to acknowledge that they have succeeded in this, and that would be a lifestyle that somebody does want. And maybe you work with the exercise as that final step, that movement part, which people have a lot of resistance to initially. But if you're feeling really good, and that 3 days or 1 day a week that you did that exercise, you feel really, really good the next day, and you begin to create this new routine, you do change, but you change maybe for the better based off of whatever the conditions and issues were prior. I feel like the people have a desire sometimes to feel bad, and that's coming from somewhere. That desire to eat bad is coming from somewhere. It's that pile on. It's hard to see what the source is. So once you dig in and kind of get that figured out, that desire, that demotivator goes away. And I bet you do see a lot of really good outcomes when people start to see those results and can acknowledge that, like, wow, I feel really good. I'm feeling great. So somebody came to you with tiredness, a little overweight, and with joint pain, and you find the sources, who knows what, right? Whatever. That alone can be great. Then you adjust their diet, they start to feel amazing, and they start to naturally want to be more active. And there is that term, use it or lose it. if you don't use the body, it won't let you use it. It'll just kind of drop off. The joints will start to get all crinkly, and you got to use it if you want to use it. You got to be able to push pressure onto the body so that it can build up and gain strength and all that great stuff. Are you seeing kind of that transformational process with people that are coming from kind of a very dark place into maybe shining and becoming really bright and brilliant?
Yeah, definitely. And I think what you said is so right, to be able to create these little success experiences for them along the way. And that's also why I usually don't tend to start with the really big things immediately, because it's really hard for people when they work towards something and it takes a long time for them to see results. It doesn't keep them motivated. So
Right.
finding low hanging fruits, finding little things you can start with that have already a big impact, that give you a better feeling, that reduce your symptoms, but that also give you motivation because you feel like you're doing something and you're actually seeing results and it's actually working. And that is what is going to keep you motivated to then continue and take on bigger and bigger things. And what I also tend to see is what you mentioned before. People sometimes have this desire to feel bad. We do
Mm-hmm.
things that are bad for ourselves, and we don't really understand why we do that. So what I usually do after I mentioned before, and working with them through a 3-step process. The first step would be the mindset. Second step would be lifestyle, where we talk about, diet, exercise, sleep, and so on. But then in the last step, in the third module, usually what I tend to work through with them are these things that still hold us back, these little obstacles that we have inside us, these
Mm-hmm.
voices that, tell us, do the thing, even though it's bad for you, these little self-sabotaging acts that we all do, and we don't understand where they come from. Working through those, finding out who are you actually? Who
Mm-hmm.
are you at your core? What is going on inside of you? Understanding this voice and where that comes from. And that is something that I find really important for people with autoimmune diseases, but probably any kind of chronic health condition, because what tends to happen is when we get a diagnosis like this takes over this person that we are. Suddenly we are this sick person. Suddenly our whole identity shifts and we don't really know who we are anymore. We're not that person who we used to be before we got sick, but we also don't want to be this person who identifies just as a patient, whose whole life revolves around their health suddenly. So we tend to forget or lose the person that we actually are underneath that, because the person is still there. We just can't see them anymore. Sometimes we don't see them in the mirror because these health conditions sometimes, change our appearance. That can be difficult for people to deal with. But there's many different medications that change our appearance, that change our body image. So not being able to see the person anymore, but not being able to feel like them anymore, not being able to do the things that you used to love, that really does something with people. And they tend to lose the person who they used to be. So that is something I spend a lot of time with them on, also to find out who that person actually is. What is important to you in life beyond feeling better? What are your values? What are your beliefs? What do you stand for? What are you looking for in life? What's your purpose? And often people don't know. And if they don't know these things, it's impossible for them to follow this internal drive that they have, because we all have this compass, but we first have to discover where it points to.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're able to identify that and then follow this path, our whole life is going to turn out so much easier, because it's more in alignment with the things that are actually important to us. If we don't see the compass, and sometimes we do this, sometimes we do that, and we get pulled here and there between different kinds of values that we think are important to us, but actually they aren't really, but we never take the time to question those, we're not 100% invested in our actions, because it's not something that is important to us at our core.
Right.
So we might work on health right now, but we might do it for the wrong reasons, But if we
Mm-hmm.
then discover what your values are, why you are here on this earth, what is your path, and that comes back to this vision in the beginning. If you didn't have any health condition that holds you back, what would you do? What would your life be like? Because many people don't have health conditions. And yet they are not really moving towards fulfilling their destiny, fulfilling their purpose, because they never question what that even is. That doesn't give you direction in life. So what I tend to find is that people who walk this path to improve their health, to improve their life, as a side effect, you are presented with this opportunity to evaluate where your life even goes, if you are happy with how your life played out so far. Because those are all things that can hold us back, that can fuel bad behavior, that can fuel this kind of self-destructive behavior that we often exhibit because we're not really fulfilled with how our life is going. So if we don't tackle that at the root and turn that around and identify what is it actually that I want out of life, we're never going to be able to fully overcome these inner obstacles that we have. So it's really important for me to spend a lot of time on that, on this last path, to really soul search a bit, discover what drives people. Because when they know this, the rest of the path is so much easier. They have their priorities straight. They know exactly where their path is leading. They know what feels aligned for them in life and what doesn't, what the right decisions are and what the wrong decisions are. They can evaluate if the priorities that they have set for themselves so far have helped them. Are they actually aligned with what they think their purpose is? Are they actually aligned with what they think their values are? Or is it something that comes from peer pressure? That is something that we grew up with, values that we have received from home, from school, from university, work. There's a lot of values that we think are our own, but aren't actually. And if we don't take the time to really dig deep there and discover that, we're never going to know.
Right.
But once we know, that changes our whole life.
Yeah. And it's kind of like a philosophy of life and kind of delving into that morals and where you align yourself, where you want the ship to go, that kind of thing, looking ahead versus being just, in the now.
Yeah.
And now if you have a client that wants to reach out to you, anybody that's listening that is really interested in learning more about the AIP approach to wellness, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I have a website, xeniabrandstetter.com. I'm sure we can copy that somewhere because
It'll be
I
in the
have a very
description.
complicated name. I'm sorry for
Yeah.
that. But yeah, click on that link. There will be an option for you to book a free call with me. So I'm offering a free one-off 60-minute coaching call. It's a proper coaching call, so it isn't a sales call. And we can talk through any issues that come up for you, any thoughts you have, to find out where you're stuck, where I can help, where maybe you can also work on your own. There's no strings attached. You don't have to sign up to work with me. But I think often having this first hurdle tackled, where you have lined out all of the things that are holding you back, we have found next steps for you, we have found a path forward for you, that often brings so much clarity for people. So just knowing what's next, knowing where they can make a difference, knowing where they can start, that can be a huge shift for people. So do that call. There's no risk. The worst thing that happens is that it doesn't help you, but then you lost an hour and
Had
the
a good
upside would
conversation though,
be
right?
and the upside would be endless, because if that really shifts you into action mode, if that helps you figure out what's next for you and how you can impact your own health, turn around your life, that is priceless, and that is what I hope I can help with.
Awesome. That's great. Well, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your message. And we'll have your link in the description, and I'll put you out on all the socials. And I really appreciate it and hope that you have a great day.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me.
Yep, take care.